Sherrone Moore is going to take the podium Thursday morning, and then we'll get the scrum with him on Thursday afternoon. Chris Ballas, I mean, as you prepare, as you kind of get yourself in the headspace for what our coverage at this event will look like, what is the one thing that you want to know from Sherrone Moore? Maybe the biggest burning question that you have right now?
Yeah, and he's not going to answer it. So if we're going to be honest, remember when we talked to him a month ago, we asked him, he said, I'm not talking about the quarterbacks. And that's what everybody's going to ask about. And he's going to say the same thing. We're going to go into camp and we're going to see who does best and so on and so forth. And but I would imagine it's going to be some sort of a platoon in the opener, Anthony, and he won't tell us that. But I do want to know, I guess we can ask the questions that he can answer. And it's like, how's the offseason gone in terms of weight gains and guys being where they're supposed to be and everything else. And that's what he'll be able to answer for us. But there's not going to be a whole lot much different than what we learned in the spring from him. And because he hasn't seen anything. Right. And so he can tell us what went on in the weight room. And I'll remember one year when Lloyd Carr was there and I asked him about Gabe Watson. Gabe Watson being a big defensive tackle. This is probably 20 years ago already. Now it's crazy. Who had all the talent in the world, but was he going to do what he needed to do over the summer, Anthony, to put himself in position to be a dominant tackle? And Lloyd kind of looked at me when I asked. He goes, "We'll see." And I'm like, okay, that was my answer right there. He hadn't done what he needed to do, and he never really did. Still a good player, but could have been a dominant player and never was. But I think Sherrone keeps it a little bit more close to the vest. So some of the questions, this is basically one of those things more for the fans than the media. We're going to get a lot of quotes that don't mean a whole lot unless somebody goes off the rails and says something they weren't supposed to, or says it gives some bulletin board material. And you can be damn sure that the Ohio guys will be trying that with the Michigan players, because they always do. There's always that one or two guys there, asking about Michigan, Ohio State, and so on and so forth. So, but other than that, Anthony, it's going to be pretty vanilla, but it'll be fun because we get a chance to. This really kind of, like I said, kicks off the season for us.
Yeah, for those of you watching the video version, the Big Ten Media Day schedule is up. Michigan is on day 3 with Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Oregon, and Washington. And to me, it's going to be a lot to come out of that day, just because your national championship game foe is a conference opponent now. I know the Ohio State game is always going to be circled as the biggest, but arguably your second biggest opponent of the year in Oregon is going to be there that same day. So it's going to be exciting. I will be interested to see how much of the Buckeye contingent does remain now that it is a 3-day event. But then again, the one bulletin board question probably will pay their hotel rate for the entire trip. So I'd imagine we'll see them on Thursday. So Michigan has 3 players that they will bring there. Donovan Edwards, who I feel like I've seen him more than close family members this summer. He's been at NIL events and doing his own camps and things like that everywhere. Kind of has become the de facto face of this organization now that he's been on, he's on the cover of College Football 25. He's in the marketing for that. He's doing NIL events. He's everywhere. And I think he has kind of relished that role. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and ask, like, at this point, all of the storylines with Donovan have been well plowed at this point. But when you look at him going into this season, do you see him as running back 1, or is he 1A and 1B with Kalel Mullings? Is it a 3-headed monster if like a Jordan Marshall comes in and lights it up? So when you look at, just Donovan Edwards in particular, listen, the flash has been outstanding, but to me, a guy that needs to learn to hit more singles and doubles.
Yep, 100%. Can't be all or nothing all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be in tons of 3rd and longs, right? And there's no J.J. McCarthy to bail you out like he did last year against Michigan State. Looking back at that game, I watched that again the other night, Anthony, and it was J.J. McCarthy, 3rd and 14, first down. J.J. McCarthy, 3rd and 11, touchdown. So it was one thing after another. If Alex Orji has to do that, I don't think you're doing it. I think you're punting a lot. So to me, you're right. 2 things about him. He gets tripped up a little bit easily at times, and he has to be that guy that can break that tackle like Blake Corum learned to do, keep the chains moving, get those couple extra yards, and do a better job with his vision. Even his first touchdown in the Washington game, he ran right into the back of a lineman, then he busted out of there for his touchdown. The second one was much better, but it's the vision and the patience that we need to see from him to prove that he's an every down back, and I think he can be. It's late in his career, but we've seen guys at and let's not pretend that Donovan Edwards hasn't already had a very good career here, right? With Blake Corum, as as the second back, but it's a different animal when you're trying to be that first back, and it'll be interesting to see how they use him too. Will they use more of Mullings and Edwards on the field at the same time with Donovan as a pass catcher? I think that would be a big weapon for them. So, but that is the question mark. And can he keep those legs moving? He looks bigger, clearly. He looks ready and anxious for the part. And what a great kid, man. This guy has always been happy. Every time we've talked to him, he has never complained. He has always been nothing but great with us. So hoping that he has the kind of season that everybody expects. And hey, hoping that we get to see him throw it too every now and then, like we're seeing in the picture right here now.
Let me ask you this. You need a big throw to be made in a big game. Do you trust Alex Orji or do you trust Donovan Edwards?
That's a fair question. If it's not predictable, right? But there will be times, I bet you'll see Donovan throw a couple passes this year. So it's a fair question. And that's the big question mark about Alex Orji, right? Is can he find those guys downfield? And you cannot turn the ball over. And I think you're going to be seeing them play it even more close to the vest than they have the last few years, because they're going to play to their defense. That's their strength. There's no question about it. This defense is the strength of this team. And if you're going to be playing complementary football, then you're going to have to trust those guys and not put them in bad positions. And that means not giving the ball to the opponent on your side of the field. So that's why I'm so interested to see what the game plan is going to be. And even in week 1 against Fresno State without Jeff Tedford, which is crazy. Already we got a curveball here early in the before the season even starts. So, but to me, that's what we're going to be watching. And love Donovan Edwards, though. I love Alex Orji's potential. I would love to see him put it all together, because Anthony, let me ask you this. Boy, there aren't very many better interviews that you've done, I bet, than what you just saw from Alex Orji.
No, every time. I think this was the second time we've talked to him, if you don't count the spring game.
Yeah.
And yeah, he carries himself extremely well. And, with him, he's not a guy like, there are really two scenarios here. He's either going to be the starter or he's going to come in and be kind of the platoon change of pace guy, like the JJ was back in 21. And, I had asked him, knowing that you probably have a role regardless, does that take pressure off of you? And he says, no, it does not. Like, he knows what the standard is. I think he's doing everything he can to try and emulate JJ McCarthy, which, again, easier said than done. I think history, people are going to look at the stats that JJ put up and be like, yeah, he was all right. He's pretty good. But just from a like charisma standpoint, from a gravitas standpoint, from a steps up and a gotta have it moment situation standpoint, these are enormous shoes to fill. And one of the knocks on JJ coming out of college and heading to the NFL is that he was just kind of boring. He was just sort of, the stats weren't great, didn't do a ton to jump off the page, but you're going to learn, I think, pretty quickly, regardless of who the quarterback is, just how good he was, because he made the simple things look so easy. And they are not easy in college football, executing that. So, but at least he's got it between the ears. I think if they need to put the ball in his hands and make something happen, I don't think that moment is going to be too big for him. It's just a matter of, are you on time? Are your mechanics sound? Do you make the right reads? Do you get the ball out quick enough? Again, I think that so much of what Michigan was offensively last year, really the last few years, listen, they're just going to come right at you. Like, they are what they are. They just execute at an extremely high level. And they're going to lose a bit of that element. But when you look at, and this is, again, I'm not going to go too deep into the video game, because I feel like talking about the video game is akin to people talking about how good their fantasy football team is. When you kind of just in a virtual setting, see the type of players that they have. And then you go back and, you watch what Michigan's game plan was in the Rose Bowl last year, where there's the crossing routes, there's the pre-snap motion. This is really going to test the creativity consistently of Sherrone Moore and Kirk Campbell. And I think it's more than just, I'm most interested in just how creatively this looks heading into the season.
Yeah, are they going to use Alex Orji? Are you going to use more read option with him, for example? I think that would play to his strengths. And if you're going to run him a lot, it can't just be wildcat and you're just doing this and you're just doing that and run straight runs with him because everybody's going to be loading the box, right? So, but I trust Kirk Campbell and I trust Sherrone Moore more than anything to put them in positions to move the ball. And these are the guys that they decided, hey, these are our quarterbacks, right? If it's Jack Tuttle, I think they'll throw more. I think Jack Tuttle gets a bad rap that everybody says, oh, he was terrible at Indiana. Well, he had a terrible supporting cast, number one. Number two, then he was backing up Michael Penix, and then he was backing up J.J. McCarthy. So, but to me, Kirk Campbell is a workaholic. He's a guy that's going to be in that lab every day, designing plays and designing an offense that plays to his strengths, and that makes me feel much better about the direction of the program and the offense going into the end of the year.
Yeah, I think when it comes to, I think that's maybe the biggest area that Michigan can kind of make their mark and establish an identity. I don't think they're going to be as clinical as they were under Jim Harbaugh. And to a certain extent, you kind of saw that when he wasn't on the sideline last year. Now, there were extenuating circumstances for that, given that the weeks leading up to those games down the stretch were kind of crazy. But just because you're not clinical doesn't mean you can't still be hard to defend.
Right.
I think this offense has the ability to be very hard to defend, despite this. I won't even call it a talent deficit, just the questions that they have at each of those positions. Max Bredesen, Makari Page will also be at Big Ten Media Days. No disrespect to either guy. I am going to enjoy talking to Max Bredesen. We did an interview with him during spring ball, and he's going to be one of those mentality setting guys. Makari Page, kind of a quiet guy, doesn't say a ton. Don't know that we're going to get any state secrets out of him, but are there any storylines with either of those two players that you might look to address next week?
Yeah, just about the replacing of Rod Moore, right? Because this is a guy who was going to be the quarterback of the defense, and now they're asking Makari Page to be that guy. And it's going to be tough. There's no question about it. It's really not in his nature to be the guy who talks a lot and to be the guy that's directing traffic back there. But now they need him to be. So he's going to have to step up. And without Rod Moore back there, that's his role now. I also want to hear what he thinks about the other safety spot. And, these guys, they're going to mention everybody, right? Even from the starters, potential starters to walk-ons. I want to get the Michigan State angle with Mangum and how he has adapted into that room, because that is unique. That is extremely unique when you get somebody to defect from your rival. We saw it with Justin Boren going to Ohio State, Joey Velasquez this year. A lot of people still don't know that Joey Velasquez, former linebacker and baseball player, is now at Ohio State. So, but it'll be interesting to see how that's going. And then I want to hear about the corners, and we'll ask them about Amir Hall and Jair Hill and what we've seen back there. But as far as Makari goes, he's been here forever. It's like you said, he's not going to say a whole lot. Quiet kid, but those will be the talking points that I ask him about.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add on that. I think that's probably the best angle with him. Max Bredesen, I just want to know, is it going to be a little more tight end? Is there going to be a little more, you see him a little more involved in the passing game? I think that's within the range of outcomes as well.